Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. My name is Ricky Lawshae, or Headless Zeke, and this is my talk, What is Dead May Never Die, the Immortality of SDK Bugs. And I apologize, I was told that the screens are not working, so you're just going to have to imagine what my slides look like. But yeah, let's get into some introductions. I'm a principal security researcher for Keysight Technologies based out of Austin, Texas. Most of my focus is around offensive research on IoT devices. And I found vulnerabilities in stuff from Meta and Mazda and Crestron and yada, yada, yada. I've spoken at several conferences, including RuxCon, Recon, InsomniHack. This is technically my 7th time speaking at DEF CON, 5 times at DEF CON proper, and this is my 2nd time speaking for IoT Village. Okay, so first off, let me define what I'm talking about when I say an SDK. So SDK stands for Software Development Kit, but in this case, we're really talking more about a system development kit. So it's basically a collection of, applications, drivers, scripts, tool chains, example code, whatever you need to get your chip integrated into a third-party ecosystem. And it can include, both standard and non-standard things. So you're going to have like an SSH service or a web service. But you're also going to have, proprietary network protocols and things like that. And for obvious reasons, this talk is focusing on network chipsets, specifically because, I'm looking for exploits. I'm looking for like remote vulnerabilities that I can exploit. So that's going to involve networking capabilities. Okay, so basically, chipsets are very complicated, and they're getting more complicated every day. Something that used to be like an integrated circuit or a microcontroller is now a full system on chip kind of thing. So because of that, and because of the fact that chipset makers want people to buy their chips to use in their devices, they need a way for these device makers to quickly and easily integrate their chips into their devices. And all of that, you need to minimize dev time and dev effort and keep costs down. One problem is that chipsets end up changing ownership quite a bit. Like companies get bought by other companies, and they end up inheriting these chipset lines, and they weren't involved in the development process themselves, so they need these SDKs to help them support this product line that they just bought from another company. So all of this can lead to some unintended behaviors. You'll end up integrating a chipset into your device, and then all of a sudden find out later on down the road that you've got these services running on your device that you had no idea about. That actually happened on an audit I was doing on the Oculus, where there ended up being a UDP service that they didn't know about, and I was able to use that to send a certain string of packets, and it'll knock the Oculus offline, kind of thing. And they had no idea it was there, and it was ended up being some mobile chipset maker. It was that was who they had to disclose that to, because it wasn't even their code, And also another problem that can crop up is all of these, the example code that chip makers put out there as part of their SDK is never meant to go into production. But when I'm a device maker and I'm, looking to implement your chip in my device, I'm going to take the easy route, and they just end up using that code example, and that code was never audited, never hardened, so that's another issue. And then also out-of-date versions happen all the time because you've got these SDKs that have all of these libraries that they depend on, and you have to keep on track of keep up to date on every one of those libraries that you've pulled in to make sure that you're patching against vulnerabilities that are found. And some open source projects get forked and modified and never keep up with the updates that were from the original version. So all kinds of things, and then all of that, on top of all of that, you have this scattered install base where, so I'm a chip maker and I release a chip, and then that chip gets used by all of these different vendors across their entire product lines, and so that SDK gets scattered out to the winds, and once a vulnerability is found, you can't put the genie back in the tube of toothpaste, as they say. One thing to note in this talk, I'm about to start talking about vulnerabilities and attack surfaces and specific SDKs. Not every chip maker uses the same SDK for their entire product line. Lots of times there's going to be multiple SDKs for different versions of different chips. But there will be commonalities, especially in the proprietary services that they've written themselves. They'll copy paste that into every version of their SDK. And also source code can be hard to find. I know you won't be able to see it on the screen because the screens don't work, but where I'm able, I will link to code repos that I've been able to find for different SDKs just to help you out in your own research efforts. And the only other thing I want to note before I get into the actual meat of the talk, I love command injection bugs. They're my favorite type of bug. And they're especially effective in situations like this because when you've got an SDK that supports multiple different architectures and different devices and different memory layouts, you can find one command injection bug and exploit the entire install base that chip runs on. So it's really awesome from an exploitation standpoint, and that's why botnet authors definitely pay attention when it comes to command injection vulns and SDKs. So yeah, that's about it for the introduction portion. So now I'm going to start talking about some common chip makers and their attack surfaces. First off, we've got Broadcom / Brocade / Cypress / Infineon. This is one of those that changes hands quite a bit. So there once was a company called Avago that bought Infineon in 2008, and then Avago bought Broadcom in 2015, and then Avago changed its own name to Broadcom. So that's where Broadcom comes from. And then in 2016, Cypress buys Broadcom's IoT portfolio, and that includes the YSED SDK, which I'll talk about in a second. In 2016, and then Broadcom buys Brocade in 2017. Broadcom also tries to buy Qualcomm in 2017, but that got denied. And it's one of the most widely used chipsets. I see Broadcoms all over the place. And then, so for their attack surface for HTTP, they use kind of a mashup of micro HTTP and mini HTTP. And then Go Ahead also. Go Ahead is used in a lot of these SDKs. And then their UPnP implementation is super buggy, and also there's evidence of it being ripped off of Rawlink's UPnP implementation. I've got a URL here for the, citing my sources on that. And then I've also got a source link to some source code for their generic SDKs there. And then for the YSAD SDK, that's owned by Cypress now. Oh, 1 minute. I just started 10 minutes ago. Am I, is this creator stage 2? Am I in the right room? Okay, because my talk started at 1:30. Oh, I had it as 1:30. Okay, well, let's just cut to the end then, maybe? Yeah, okay, so I'm going to put all of these slides up on my GitHub, headlesszeek, github.com/headlesszeek. Okay, so yeah, we've got Broadcom, MediaTek, Realtek, Microchip. That one is awesome. I really wanted to talk about that one, but I'm going to skip past it. Okay, we've got some old days, which are vulnerabilities that were found, many years back. This was actually the reason for this talk was I found a vulnerability in Realtek's UPnP implementation, and I found it in 2014, and it just made it on the CSICEV list last year because it's still being actively exploited like 10 years later. Okay, so blah, blah, blah. So 0 days. Okay, so there was a chip maker called Quantenna that got bought by ON Semiconductors. Quantenna used to be really popular back in the day. They were used by AT&T for all of their set-top boxes and modems and stuff like that. There's a service on there called QCS API that's got hundreds of different commands that you can run for configuring the Wi-Fi. And that service actually has an RPC service where you can actually send those commands remotely. So all right. Yeah.